Hello guys, I'm glad to see you again on this YouTube channel. Quite a lot of times since the last voice talk video. Today I'm here to showcasing my little Blender add-on that I released for free. This is Bakeflow, an add-on really tailored to help you during your rotopology, UV baking process especially, and to tailor a lot of little operator. So this add-on is at the same time a showcase and a little documentation. So let's directly dive in and go into each of those parameters one by one and to see what it does. Firstly, when you install the add-on is located afterward in the end panel of Blender into Bakeflow, and afterward you do have this 4 sub-panel: UV helper, baking supplies, and Marmoset bridge and their own maps properties. Okay, great. Let's dive directly into UV helper. Okay, so for UV helper, let's bring Suzanne to help us demonstrate what it does. UV helper is kind of a lot of little operators that I've grouped them here to being really near when you do your rotopology UV baking workflow, you know, and you want to quickly iterate along selection, edges, seam, sharp edge, and go on, blah blah blah. So let's see what all of this operator does. The first one, quite easy: select by angle, get a selection, a raw selection based on the angle threshold you select here. Can be really helpful when you get a decimate or and you want a raw selection quite quickly. Just input the angle and select the angle, and you can afterward do whatever you want with that selection. The select contour by edges is sometimes I figure out it's easier when you want to create an island to select the faces instead of the edges. So for example, if I want the inner of the here, I can just quickly create something like that. And then if I want the contour to get the edges itself up, I can press that, and you see it will be quite complicated to get this one here. So now that I have the selection, due to this little operator here, I do have the option to mark seam like that. However, as you might know, you might want to tag sharp edges into your seam to avoid normal gradient into your normal maps that you will bake. For more information about that, I link you about my little baking tutorial I've made that can help you figure out how sharp edges could help. But note that I've set up here a tag and a seam and sharp at the same time operator, and clear seam and sharp also at the same time. So it allows us to at the same time it's seam and sharp edges. Okay, great. Now let's move on those two operators. So for the clear split normal is most of the time when you do import a low poly, even high poly from ZBrush, they do come with custom split normal due to how ZBrush export, and it can be nasty to work with them, especially if you want to have proper normal afterward for your baking, if you go for example on a decimate. So this allows you to let's create some custom split normal to, on a batch of meshes, you can select them all and clear split normal, and they will all have the clear split normal basically. So quite cool, quite little click time saving, but really helpful. For the add modifier one, it's a button you will mostly use at the end of your rotopology when you want to switch to baking part of the workflow. It's like to add the most needed modifier you need all time for baking. So for example, let's add this. You do have the triangulate, because as you might know, if the asset will not have deformation afterward, you want to triangulate it to keep proper triangulation over different 3D software. The weighted normal to allow a more smoother normal over the whole mesh, and avoid gradient on the normal map afterwards. And smooth by angle that allow to have everything smooth while keeping the sharp edges with setup. So those are quite the modifier I use all the time, and so I really like to have them all quite quickly. And not that it's intelligent, it's like if you already add, for example, the triangulate modifier, it will only add the other one and will not duplicate the triangulate one. So you can do a wrap selection, add modifier, and it will be good. Okay, and lastly, we do have the detect handgun, that is quite simply a handgun detector within a range. So let's use Suzanne and let's kill it by adding a couple of, couple of handgun. So here I dissolve, here I dissolve. We do have 2 handgun on Suzanne. So let's color it all around. And so right now what we do have is like we can detect the handgun within our current selection. So what it does, it turns the mesh with handgun into edit mode and selects the handgun themselves. And in addition, they tell you the amount of handgun you do have. So it's really easy afterward to, for example, if you want to correct them, you already have the selection and just can toggle focus on them. That's great, but we can also make it compute over all visible meshes. So no matter the selection, here it detects the handgun and turn all meshes concerned with that within edit mode with the selection on the handgun. And last but not least, it can do that on all meshes, even the ones that are hidden. However, you need to know that if you do have high poly and stuff like that into your Blender file, it can take quite a lot of time. So here I will not showcase this range, but it works, but it takes quite a lot of time. If you do have a high poly, I do recommend you to only stick to visible or selected. Let's move now to baking supply. So baking supply, there is not that much addition in terms of operator compared to the previous version. So you do have, for example, let's delete all the Suzanne and to refocus on the dagger. You do have, for example, visibility based on suffix. So you can show the high poly, hide the high poly, show the low poly, hide the low poly. You got it. I added a rename operator that help you get the correct, because like when you are at this stage of renaming and cleaning all your mesh name, it might be interesting to having an intelligent renamer within the panel. And why I call it intelligent renamer, it's because in opposition to the classic batch renamer of Blender that adds .00 to every incremation like that, here you do it more cleanly. So for example, let's call it cube, and if I rename, you see _0, and it's more clean in terms of naming convention. By the way, by talking about naming convention, as you will see with the Marmoset bridge, you need to respect kind of a naming convention for how you should name your asset for them to be correctly loaded. So here, don't hesitate to take a look at it open here the Marmoset documentation, and it open it directly onto the naming convention where here it explains everything you need to know about naming convention inside Marmoset. So don't hesitate to take a look. In addition to that, you do have the possibility to quickly add, for example, suffix I or suffix low, and you can turn I to low and low to I quite easily. In addition, you do have the transfer name operator that is basically a super powerful operator from my point of view, where, for example, we do have high poly. Up. And you do have several low poly, let's say. And you want a correct naming onto those low poly based on the high poly. And so they will be imported as in all those 4 low poly in the same bake group as this one high poly. So here I can transfer a name and it will transfer the name of the active object to all the other selections. So if I transfer name here, up you see, I do keep Susan high, but all the other get Susan low and with the underscore after the suffix. And so it will get into the correct bake group together. So it's quite powerful to got the naming properly done, either in high to low, or we can have the upper. The other, oh, we do have a Susan low here. We can have in the other kind of orientation upper, and here it gets the eye properly set up. So quite helpful. Last but not least, we do have the exporter operator that are really the main purpose of the baking supply add-on initially. What it does is like it exports either the high or the low poly based on the mesh suffix into 2 separated files. So here I can set up the file name, so let's call it demo export up, and afterward it's based on the selection. So if I have nothing selected, tell me no object selected. So let's create let's get a selection. So let's show I up, and here I do have high and low poly. Note that right now we can see that the mesh export at blend file location. That's because the mesh export path is not defined. If you want the exported file, either the high and the low, to be exported somewhere else than the root of the Blender file, you can define it here. So let's do that. Let's go into, I don't know, here, export meshes and accept. So here it update and show you a preview of where it will be export. So now I can export the low up, and we can take a look quite quickly here into export mesh. We do have the low poly, and I can export the high too. Note that the export time depends on the vertices count of your high poly. Okay, and I separated both because most of the time you want to export the high one time and then iterate on the low poly. That allows you way quicker export time. So now that both are exported and are here, we could have import them manually into Marmoset and start our baking. However, I've created some things that allow you to set up everything for you, and that's what we'll cover in the Marmoset Toolbage bridge. So what it does, what the purpose is really to have one button that will export your mesh, open Marmoset, brings your file in, and then bake. So what it does is like on your current selection, it uses those 2 exporters, so you need to set up the file name and the mesh path properly. And afterward, it open Marmoset, create a baker, and quick load both of them. So for us to be more explicit for the demo, let's bring Suzanne, that will be our high poly, up, and let's bring a cube, that will be our low poly. So what I can do, up, transfer the name, that's perfect. So right now, if I close this little pop-up, we can see the current export path is not set. That's because here it's empty. What we could do is to use the same path as a mesh, for example, or we can define our own. So let's do that. I can go into my demo folder, texture, and accept. Okay. So now you do have the option to override all the properties of you do have the option to override all the properties of the baker or not. And also you do have the option to send some map setting that we'll see afterward. For now, let's keep that toggle off. And let's send properties. So what will be the properties? It will be, for example, the texture path, the sample, and everything here. So most of the time, do you want it? We do have also an option that we can toggle here. That will be the quick bake. What is quick bake? Is directly when you open Marmoset and load your file, it bake. So right now we do have a button that export and bake. That's great. So let's test it out. So I can click here. And so it export, open Marmoset, bake, preview, bam. We do have a one-click bake, yippee. And we can see that it used the preset that was stored as default into Marmoset Baker, and we'll see afterward how we can override that. So welcome Suzanne as a cube. What is great is like this still use the quick loader option. So for example, if I want to iterate over my low poly, up, let's do something quite simple, up, and something like that. I can export low and go back directly here, and boom. And due to the fact that it still uses quick loader, you do have you can quickly iterate over your low poly as you want, and press one button, go back to the baker, and it adapt. So I'm sorry, Suzanne, you look awful like that, but it worked. Okay, great. Now let's go back to previous version of Suzanne with the cube. It was more funny. Let's see now all the properties we do have access to. You do have access to the sample to have a much more high quality bake with more rich sample, for example, on the normal, beyond occlusion, and stuff like that. So let's turn it 32, for example. You do have the pixel depth. That is really important when you want to, for example, bake 8 map, depth map. For designer, for example, you want to be at least 16. Or when you want to bake world position, for example, if I remember correctly, Substance Painter is picky if the world position map is not in 16-bit too. So you can override that, and you can change the format. Note that both of those options work together. For example, if I want a JPEG but I want 16-bit, it will tell me that it's not possible and will override those properties for me. And same thing, if I want 32 for PNG, that is not possible. It's to switch to PSD. And same here, if I want to PNG up, it goes to the upper pixel depth I could have. Okay, great. So let's keep it 8-bit PNG. The time mode is if you want to bake pair texture set or not. So here, I just have one texture set, so I don't really bother, but it's based on the material of your low poly. So you can switch that if needed. The max offset is like a little option that you can toggle or not to just kind of boost all the cage max offset of your baker. It will take every cage and say, okay, you do have a bit more amplitude. Most of the time it can be cool to like override a little bit the default value up if you do have just some clipping, simple clipping issue. Can be interesting. And then you do have here OpenGL or DirectX that will basically switch the normal map setting. You will see that this will directly interfere with the map setting, but that we can set up here. And after, last but not least, the texture resolution that we can have between each of our selection, and we can even go for a non-square selection if needed. Up. Okay, great. So let's go over 4K, 30 sample, pixel depth, and see if it works. Up, export, hit open Marmoset. Here we go. We do have everything that is baked properly, and we can say and check that we are in 32-bit, PNG, and 4K. Great. Now let's switch to the interest purpose, all the map properties that we will have access here. So for the map properties, I need to toggle send map setting, of course. This will override the default preset of the baker. So again, if you want to keep your own preset that you've set up on Marmoset, don't hesitate to untoggle that. Okay. And so now what we can do is to just drop some maps, the map we need to that we need to bake. So we need normal BG8, blah 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 blah. Up, here we go. So you do have the option to select between all those maps here. We can remove map, and you can select if the map is in the list but not toggle. Also, it can be for you to have your setting. So you can create each map and affect the properties of each of those maps. For example, if the normal I want to turn it into DirectX up, you see that it will flip the Y channel. And if I untoggle that, it's the same. Another example is, for example, the curvature. If you use the automap loader of Substance Painter, for example, you know that it doesn't recognize curve. It recognizes the suffix curvature. Yep, curvature. Right, properly is better. Great. And if you want to have custom ambient occlusion setting about ray count or surge distance or cavity weight, blah blah blah, you can do it here. So for example, much more quality in the ray count. Okay, so now that I do have that here, I can send those properties and bake to see how it goes. So here you will see in the bake settings that I only have those maps that I've selected here. If I go, for example, on the curvature, I do have the correct suffix. If I go for the normal map, and flip it afterward. And if I go for the ambient occlusion, I do have the correct ray count. What is great with all those settings is just like that, kind of boring to set up each by one, each time you create a stuff. You can create presets. And so for example, here, I'm happy with my current preset. I can name it whatever I want. So it will be whatever I want. Up, okay. And so now I do have a preset that's named whatever I want. It's like a sample at in time. So if I remove this up and I want whatever I want, perfect. I got my preset. Note that the preset are stored as a Blender preferences level and not at a Blender file level. So even if I create a new file, let's save this one first. Up, new file. And I go there and I go into my Bakeflow and I want to load a preset, I do have whatever I want. So it's kind of cool because you can create your own preset, take the time to create your own preset, and then just sample them directly within Blender. So let's get back to our previous file. Up. Note that with the add-on, I provide two presets that I've made. So it will be the asset and the tile level. Up. Let's kill this one. Up. So it will be the asset tile level, the asset preset, and the tile level preset. Let's take a look. So for example, on the asset preset, it's like everything set up properly, and with, for example, more high quality ambient occlusion, a second ambient occlusion with a floor to get custom setting afterward, etc. And for the tile level, you do have a that is proper set. So afterwards, you just need to adjust the inner distance based on what you want. Inner and outer distance. Okay, so now you can have your own presets, you can store them, you can load them. Yeah, that's quite a deal. It's kind of, you create whatever you want, whatever setting. And so now that we know all that, let's take a look and try with our dagger. So let's see the eye up and below and export and launch. So for sure, due to the density of the mesh, the export is a bit longer. And you see, as it exports, it directly bake within Marmoset. And boom, one click bake. It's finished for the add-on. I hope you guys appreciate it. Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comment section or in the Discord server directly. I make sure the price of the add-on remain free for everyone who can't afford it, and student, and yeah, any case. However, if you do appreciate my work and you want that I continue sharing free tools like that, don't hesitate to leave a tip on my copy that I created. It will be much more than appreciated and allows those tools to remain free. So I hope you guys understand that it would be much more than appreciated. Just to give you an idea, this tool took me several weeks and a lot of time to be built. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it will help a lot of people, so it's already quite cool. See you guys for the next video, and I'll make sure it will be about art and less about tool and tech art. See you guys!